we've recruited a guy who's a double agent, but he doesn't know that we know that he's a double agent. And he's been instructed to meet only with a station chief, and it's too dangerous for me to meet with him. Can you fly out here every month and pretend to be me and handle this double agent? I said, sure. I wasn't doing anything else. I was like training Middle Eastern intelligence services and how to do counterterrorism operations, but it was boring and pro forma. So, because I had been evacuated from Athens, all the good jobs had already been taken, so they stuck me in one just to sort of, fill the time until something else opened up. So I started flying out to the Middle East every month, and I'd meet this guy. I was 36 years old, so this guy had to be probably 20 years older than I was. And in the first meeting, it was in a hotel. I shook his hand and I gave him a big bear hug, really just to pat him down and see if he was wearing a wire or if he had a gun. And I had a gun on my ankle, but I didn't have one in a fanny pack or in a shoulder holster, so I took my jacket off, which he later told his handlers he's unarmed. And I was like, perfect, that he thinks I'm coming here unarmed. So I put my jacket on the bed and I introduced myself. I said, you want to see the chief? I'm the chief. And I'm going to tell you, I'm taking this very seriously. You are the only person that I'm handling. So I'm only doing it because you insisted on it. We're going to do some fun things together. But first thing today, we're going to talk about security. So if I get caught meeting with you, nobody cares. I'm going to get expelled. I'm going to go home. I'll get an award. It's not going to make any difference. If you get caught, you're going to go to prison for the rest of your life. So I said, you're going to do, every time we meet, something called a surveillance detection route. And I'm going to show you how to come up with one. So you start at your house, and then you go to a shop, and you buy, a light bulb. And then you take some cut-throughs through a neighborhood, and you go to another shop, and then you buy a newspaper, whatever. And then you do some crazy kind of stuff, and you go to a third shop and buy something. And then if you're not being followed, just to make sure, then you do stuff like you go the wrong way down the one-way street, or you keep making U-turns in the street or whatever, just to make sure you're clean, right? And then you also do that after our meetings. Now, on the way to the meeting, your surveillance detection route should be at least 2 hours. Make sure that you're not being followed. And then when we're done, it should be at least an hour. Got it? And he said, got it. I'll do it. So the next time we met, I said, did you do the surveillance detection route? He said, I did. Bullshit. We had 3 teams of guys on him. He got in his car at his house, drove straight to the hotel, never saw the 6 guys in 3 cars that we had on him. So I said, okay, where did you stop? He said, well, I stopped at the coffee shop and I had a coffee, and then I went over here, and then he was all made up. He wasn't stopped. I said, okay, that's great. So what I want you to do is I want you to rent a post office box. So I'm giving you my telephone number. If you need anything, I want you to call and say, I'm making this part up, the rain in Spain falls mainly in the plain. And I'm going to say, mares eat oats and does eat oats and little lambs eat ivy. And that means meet me at the Marriott coffee shop at 10 o'clock tomorrow night. Okay? He says, got it. I said, all right. Now, in the event that we lose telephone contact, I'll be able to leave a message for you in the post office box. So check the post office box once a week. He's like, okay. This guy was working for a foreign country that I can say is arguably one of our greatest and most dangerous enemies in the world. Okay? So what he's doing after the meeting is he's driving directly to that country's embassy, and he's meeting with their station chief. And then the station chief gets on the phone and reports on an open telephone line everything that happened in the meeting back to their capital. So we've got him dead to rights. We're doing this for months. And I had something that at the time was called a tri-band cell phone. They don't make them anymore, but because they don't need to. What it was it was a local number in that country, but it would ring anywhere in the world. So he called me once, and I was in Washington, and he said, hey, I have something. Can you meet me for dinner tonight? And I said, oh, I can't. I have a diplomatic event tonight, but I can meet you tomorrow night. And then I went straight to Dulles Airport and flew straight to the Middle East. Got there just in the nick of time to do the meeting. And then literally I was in that country for 3 hours. And then I caught the 12 o'clock midnight flight back to London to connect to Washington. So I'm in the office one day in headquarters, and I get this panicked call from a sister agency in Maryland. And they said, listen, are you handling this double agent? And I said, yeah. And the analyst said, he was just instructed to kill kill you in the next meeting. I said, get the fuck out of here. I said, this guy's afraid of his own shadow. He's 20 years older than I am. He's gray and fat and slow. He's not going to kill me in the next meeting. Well, they released the report saying he's been instructed to murder an FBI or a CIA officer rather. So the FBI calls and they said, he's committed crimes against the United States. We can snatch him. And I said, no. I said, listen, this is going to be decided at a pay grade above mine. So I'll get back to you guys. Well, all the big shots huddle in this meeting. They're like, we got to end the operation now. And I said, please hear me out. The guy really is afraid of his chef. He's not gonna shoot. How about this for an idea? I said, we do the next meeting in the Marriott. Every Marriott in the world is exactly the same. You walk into the room, and there's the bathroom right there, right? So we get adjoining rooms. I'll prop the door open and he'll knock. I'll tell him come in. I grab him. You guys bust in from the other room and we got him. And they're like, okay, but you're going to be armed too. I said, of course I'm going to. So I fly back out there and I'm getting reports. We had a gigantic security and surveillance team. It was like 14 guys because they're watching him. They're posted in the lobby. They're watching the bad guys, and the bad guys get in their car and they drive to the Marriott. So this is a major production. So I get a call. He's walking into the lobby, and I said, okay, I'm ready for him. So he calls me and he says, I'm here. I said, where? He said, I'm in the lobby. I said, okay, come up to the sixth floor. I'm in room 604. And then my colleagues call and they said, they got a team in here. There are seven. There were seven of us. There are seven of the bad guys, and they're all armed, and they're just standing around. Now imagine, there are only 14 people in the lobby of the Marriott. They're all intelligence officers, and they're all armed and preparing for a shootout in the Marriott. So he comes up and he knocks on the door, and I said, come in. He walks in and I just tackle him, and my colleagues and our liaison partners bust in from the adjoining room. I'm sitting on him, on his chest, and I have him pinned down, and he's on the floor and he's looking at me. And I said to him, did you really think that I am so fucking stupid that I didn't know that you came here to kill me today? Do you think I am such an amateur that I didn't know you've been a double agent since the day we met? I'm offended, I told him. And he goes, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. I said, oh, Allah's not going to be able to help you now. So what our liaison partners did, this wasn't really a part of the plan, but what the liaison partners did was one of them pulled out a syringe and just jams it in his thigh. And it turned out to be Demerol, and he was out like a light. Well, listen, dirty little secret of the hotel industry. People die in hotels all the time. And so there's a freight elevator, and you just take the dead body down in the freight elevator. So we called an ambulance. We put him with a sheet like he was dead. We took him down in the freight elevator. We put him in the ambulance. We got in our cars and we took off. In the meantime, the bad guys start talking amongst themselves. Like, where is he? He's been up there for a long time. Haven't heard any gunshots. Why hasn't he checked in? He's not answering his phone. Something's happened. What's going on? And then our guys just all leave. We left the bad guys in the lobby. He wakes up like 4 hours later and we have him tied to a chair. I was invited to a wedding that night. The crown prince's son was getting married, and I was so honored that they liked me enough that they invite me to the wedding. So he's tied to the chair. He's like, I fuck your mother. I fuck your sister. And our friends are just wailing on him. This was pre 9/11, so we never laid a hand on him. So I go, guys, I got to go to this wedding. So we need to start wrapping this up. So I said to the guy, I said, look, this is your only chance. Seriously, it's your only chance. We know who you are. We know who you represent. And we want to know where the weapons are. He said, I'll never tell you where the weapons are. I said, okay, suit yourself. And I start wailing on him again, punching him, black eye, bloody mouth. I go to the wedding, had a grand old time. I go back over to the intelligence service headquarters and I said, so where do we stand? They said, he won't say a word, just won't talk. So I said, the weapons could be in his house, obviously. Why don't we I'll call the locks and picks team and we'll just, pick the lock and go in the house. They said, can't do it. He's got a Filipino maid. She never leaves the house. And I said, okay. I said, all right, let's declare an environmental emergency. We'll say there's a gas leak.